only E fireworks, which are zero emission ones, or low emission fireworks, which are yet not been manufactured or in existence, are the ones that are going to be permitted. So we're very happy. In fact, manufacturers had strongly opposed the Government of India's affidavit in court.
फायर क्रैकर यानी पटाखों पे बैन लगाया है। 24 घंटे में से 22 घंटे बैन रहेगा। पटाखे सिर्फ 8 बजे शाम से 10 बजे रात तक 2 घंटे के लिए चलाए जा सकते हैं।
You can see the crowd on the counters. Business is already gone, sir.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जजमेंट को हम अप्रिशिएट करते हैं। रात को 10 बजे के बाद आवाज का पटाखा नहीं फोड़ना चाहिए।
Sir, we welcome the decision because, see, Supreme Court has not fully banned firecrackers. They want to regulate the fireworks, bursting of fireworks. So they might have given this time limit.
Well, it's a balancing act by the Supreme Court ahead of Diwali. No blanket ban on firecrackers, but stringent rules have been imposed on what kind of crackers can be burst and even when they can be burst. If you are living in the national capital region, that means in Delhi and surrounding areas like Gurgaon, etc., there will be designated zones where crackers can be burst. Community cracking areas, so to speak, are likely to be set up. Similar restrictions have been imposed for Christmas and New Year's as the Apex Court moves to strike a balance with right to clean air and the right to livelihood of cracker manufacturers and distributors. So can the Supreme Court order be effectively enforced by the central and state governments? We discuss that and more with a panel of special guests. But first up, our colleague Ashmit Kumar, who's been tracking the highlights in court, joins us now. Ashmit, in a nutshell, what does the order say? What does it mean?
This will be not exactly a quiet Diwali, but perhaps a quieter Diwali towards that end.
Or so we hope.
So we hope, at least that's the letter and the spirit of the order that has come across. The big takeaway, of course, is that as of right now, there's no blanket ban as such. But having said that, green crackers will be allowed. Now, there are many issues. This is the first case, this is the first issue that some of the experts highlight. Is green cracker perhaps an oxymoron? Now, because the guidelines that prescribe date back to 2008, March of 2008 is when we had an advisory which labeled certain firecrackers, depending on their chemical composition, as green crackers. Now, that itself is the first hurdle that we're likely to face. The second is with respect to enforcement. PISO will be the enforcement agency, but as what we were details that we were digging up tell us that not more than a few hundred officers are employed. That's the manpower, that's the strength. Will they be able to enforce? And that's a big question.
There's one firework research and development center in Sivakasi, the
Correct.
FRDC.
There's one testing facility which raises questions on the enforceability. Now, towards enforceability, some teeth have been given. The SHOs, the order records, will be personally liable, and that in case that these timings are not followed, in case of community cracking, so to speak, is not followed, then they'll be personally liable.
Yeah.
But how far will that be taken up is, again, only the future. Coming days will tell us. Diwali is just a few days away now.
Well, Diwali certainly is just a few days away, but as Ashmit was pointing out, that this is, in a sense, festival agnostic. The Supreme Court making it clear that this is not just applicable to Diwali, it's also applicable to other festivals like Gurpurab, Christmas, New Year's, etc. Joining us now to discuss this further, Vinod L. Tikani, member of the Fireworks Dealer Association, Saurabh Bhasin, partner at Trilegal, with us. He had filed a petition calling for a ban on firecrackers on behalf of his son. Also joining us is Vikram Singh, the former DGP of Uttar Pradesh. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the show. Saurabh, let me start by asking you about the enforceability of the order that we've seen coming in from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court very clearly says that crackers with reduced emission, as Ashmit was pointing out, improved crackers or green crackers will now be permitted to be manufactured and sold. It then says that as a consequence, production and sale of crackers other than those mentioned, which means that don't fall into the green or the improved cracker category, will not be manufactured or sold. What is the current situation in the market? Is the current inventory in compliance or not?
Look, I mean, that in essence is the question for pesos to answer, but my understanding is that a lot of the firecrackers that are currently available in the market are not in compliance with the requirements of the lower emission firecrackers that the Supreme Court has allowed. But you know, it is effectively for peso to go with the police and ensure that no sale takes place of the existing, the stock that is there with the traders and merchants, and so it is exactly for that reason that we need the institutions now to stand up and say, yes, we will honor this judgment passed by the Supreme Court and get into action to start implementing it now, because if you don't do it now, you will see very soon there will be mass dumping of the offending products that is there, and then it will be too late to do anything about it. So I think it is imperative on state governments all over the country and for our centre and the New Delhi government to act together to make sure that we have a proper enforcement of it, as opposed to what constantly happens, which is the passing of the buck, saying that I don't have the ability to control the police, whereas the centre saying that it's a state issue. But I think we need to go beyond party lines and now just stand up and say that the air that we breathe is more relevant than who controls what.
No, but I want to bring up the issue of peso, and we've been trying to get in touch with peso. We've tried the two gentlemen who head the organization. We haven't had much luck with trying to bring them onto the program, but we will continue to address that. But let's look at what the order says. Peso will ensure that fireworks with permitted chemicals only will be purchased, possessed or sold during Diwali and all other religious festivals. Peso will ensure the suspension of the licenses of manufacturers of such firework items and appropriate disposal of such stock. Peso will ensure that only those crackers whose decibel sound levels are within limits are allowed. I mean, there's a lot that the court is asking Peso to do. The question is Peso equipped to handle this, and is Peso equipped to take this order forward and enforce it? But let me first go across to Vinod Tikani. Mr. Tikani, you represent the Firework Dealers Association, sir. On the back of what the Supreme Court has said today, can the industry comply with these orders?
See, the industry is already complying with these orders of decibel level, and the suggestions given are to the point of view of the manufacturers. The traders are happy because traders are not being restricted. Traders will be selling what they will be manufacturing. So the point we were raising last year that the manufacturers should be put on some regulations or some restrictions has been taken care by the Supreme Court, and we welcome the Supreme Court judgment. Few points which the manufacturer will have to talk about. I am not the right person to answer that.
1 second. No,
Yeah.
1 minute. 1 minute. If you can explain to us, what is the quantum of the current inventory in the market that falls in the category of green or improved crackers?
So, ma'am,
Decibel
one
level
thing
is one
to
thing,
be...
but in terms of low emission and zero emission.
See, I would like to be very clear that the low emission and the suggestions given currently apply only to Delhi and NCR and not to the whole of India. So we need to be clear that this restriction is for Delhi and NCR and not for the whole of India for the green crackers part. So the green crackers, if available outside Delhi and NCR, are allowed to be sold as per the order of Supreme Court. So there's a misconception that green crackers are to be sold all over India is a wrong, it's a misconception, and only this restriction is at Delhi and NCR. So the quantum and the quantity is to be checked in Delhi NCR, and the purchase is already stopped in Delhi NCR over the past 2 years.
Saurabh, is that is that accurate?
No,
that
look,
this
I don't
applies
think
only
that's
to the
correct. I
Delhi
think the ban
NCR?
You can read the point number 13 there, sir.
No, I
it's
don't
very
think
clear.
so either.
No,
Ma'am, it is written on the point number 15 specifically
I
that
think
the
the
2
ban
points
is
are only there, which is applicable to the whole of India, that is 8 to 10, and
No.
you can check, sir, please. You would be more good in law, but it's very clear on that point.
One second. He's also a petitioner in the matter, Vinod. So let's listen into him. I also am reading the order, and I don't. I'm also a little confused on the point that you raised. So let me go across to Saurabh. Saurabh.
Yeah, look, my understanding, and I read the order at length, is that the ban applies is nationwide, and that there is no, I mean, there are aspects of the ban that don't apply nationwide, which are things like not having to go and celebrate in a communal area if you're outside their NCR and so on and so forth. But the ban on what firecrackers can be sold, they are applicable to the entire country. So I don't see how that should apply, and I think it will be important to find out what sort, to answer the question that you raised of what sort of quantity of green firecrackers we have, because as I understand it, there are very few firecrackers that comply with the norms that the Supreme Court has said that can be burst in the city. So I actually see it as a very positive order, because it does, in my mind, limit the extent of fireworks that can be burst to a large extent.
Yeah. And again, I'm reading out from the order, Mr. Tikani.
Ma'am, you can read
clause
point number 42.8. If you can read clause number 42.8, it is clearly mentioned that.
I'm reading 42, sir. I'm reading 42.
42.8, please, if you can.
Where are you seeing that this applies only to...
even those crackers which have already been produced and they do not fulfill the conditions mentioned in this above will not be allowed to be sold in Delhi and NCR. It is specifically mentioned in 42(8) that it is not allowed in Delhi and NCR, and rest it is allowed.
Clause 42 point number 1 very clearly says crackers with reduced emission, in brackets improved crackers and green crackers as mentioned in suggestions number 2 and 3 above only would be permitted to be manufactured and sold. Clause number 2 says as a consequence production and sale of crackers. Sir, I'm reading from the order, sir. 54 pages of the order. I have them in my hand. I'm reading from that. So we've got a disagreement on the interpretation of the order. We'll probably try and see if Ashmit can help us with that. But let me go across to Mr. Vikram Singh on the enforceability, because there is no clarity on whether the current inventory, how much of the current inventory will even comply with the current order and what happens then to the current inventory. And Vikram Singh, the court basically saying that the responsibility of enforcing this order lies with all official respondents and particularly the police. The police shall ensure that fireworks take place only during the designated time and at designated places. They shall also ensure that there is no sale of the banned firecrackers. In case any violation is found, the station house officer of the concerned police station of the area shall be held personally liable for such violation, and this would amount to committing contempt of court for which the SHO would be proceeded against. I mean, you know, do you really believe that this is an enforceable order?
May I submit there are 4 quick points. Firstly, it is indeed a positive order with far-reaching positive consequences, and at least I as a citizen and every citizen would be welcoming it. The timing, there is no ambiguity about the timing. There is no ambiguity about the type and the pedigree of the cracker. That green cracker, and as a very reporter very rightly said, that it is an oxymoron. It is difficult to find a cracker that can be green. Effluents and the discharge are bound to happen. And let me tell you which SHO in India or in the world can measure the emissions, whether it's green or non-green. Then the machines, we have not been able to contain drunken driving, let alone checking of the green and the non-green crackers. But an honest attempt can be made. And I would say, apart from opening a trap door or an escape route for corruption, the police leadership indeed must ensure a particular SOP to ensure that the orders of the Supreme Court are faithfully implemented and nobody takes it lightly or takes liberties with these orders. Now the police leadership will have to give a detailed SOP, and those SOs who are found guilty, indeed, the criminal contempt is a serious matter, and I would advise them that their career is finished if they're found liable in criminal contempt of the Honorable Supreme Court. Therefore, if they know what is good for them, the police leadership and the SHOs will pull up their socks and will not take liberties with the orders passed by the Supreme Court.
Well, we hope that certainly is the case, because as the court itself has pointed out. Yes, Saurabh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to mention, just to reiterate what was being said and to just move on from that a little bit, I think it's absolutely imperative that the police comes in, and I think we live in a day and age where the technology can really help us achieve some of this. So I think the police needs to set up a hotline where people can call in and report some of the violations if they're taking place. I think we had an app, at least in Delhi, when the cleaning up drive was happening, where you could post photographs and they would respond to it. We need an app of that sort that comes into place as well. I mean, it needs to be, we need the police, we need the Delhi government to go talk to RWAs to get them on board in this. If you leave this to the police, they will fail. At the end of the day, there's only so many police officers who can do this. We need them to stand up now to build awareness amongst their own colleagues. They need to go to RWAs. They need to get the RWAs involved because they will help manage situations at the lower levels as well. And it needs to be a concerted effort. The Delhi government and the police has to come together, use technology.
Absolutely. It has to be a coordinated
all of this needs to happen now, because we wait till Diwali day, it will fail.
And it'll be too late. Mr. Singh, very quickly, your response, sir.
Just one quick point, that probably Delhi is a different ball game altogether than the rest of the nation. But every control room, every district has a control room where dial 100 is operational, and anybody who feels to complain, irrespective of the app or the Wi-Fi connectivity or the hardware, software compatibility, dial 100 and make a complaint. This is your right, and it's the job of the police to ensure that they give a befitting response to every complaint.
Yes, absolutely, and we do hope that it will be a coordinated effort. But Mr. Tikani, I want to come back to you now, sir, and let's talk about the way forward, because you have not given us any clarity on how much of the current inventory, what is being manufactured, what is being sold, falls under the category of low-emission or zero-emission crackers. Now, what is going to be the approach of the Fireworks Dealers Association? What do you do with the current inventory, and how do you now move up to comply with the orders of the Supreme Court? Because this is not just applicable in Delhi NCR region, this is applicable outside as well.
Ma'am, whatever manufacturers manufacture as per PESO rules and Explosive Act, we sell only those items. First of all, we are not selling any illegal item. Now, as per my interpretation, clause 42(8) clearly mentions in the order that it is only for Delhi and NCR. And so, let the interpretation come, and then it will be a right thing to answer on it. As of now, there is no blanket ban. Since there is no blanket ban, such suggestions which are given by the Supreme Court, which are being implemented by the Supreme Court, will be implemented later on, but now currently it is for Delhi and NCR only.
Okay, that's your interpretation, Saurabh.
No, look, I think there's a lot of misinformation there. I think there is a blanket ban on high emission firecrackers, and that cannot be the way forward to do this. I think it's a highly evasive answer to the question that you asked a few times now, but the reality is that there is a blanket ban on high emission firecrackers, and it is imperative on the firecracker manufacturers and even the traders, because the traders cannot hide behind the manufacturers and say we will sell whatever they manufacture. The reality is that whatever they may have already manufactured,
how can the manufacture such kind of products? The Supreme Court cannot be.
But that is the point. That is the point. The Supreme Court has not given them the leeway to.
The intention of the Supreme Court cannot be in a day we can manufacture and we can even trade that same.
You can understand that. The Supreme Court has very clearly said that it is. Look, I mean, you're not letting me finish, but the Supreme Court has clearly said that there is no graded response here. The Supreme Court has said that as of today, you cannot have firecrackers which do not meet the compliance which are either zero emissions or low emissions that can be sold or manufactured. There is no time given for moving from one type of manufacturing to a lesser emission manufacturing. That is not an option.
Okay, let me also very quickly, for the benefit of our viewers, take you through some of the other observations made by the Supreme Court in its order. The Supreme Court says the manufacture and the sale and use of joint firecrackers, which essentially in common parlance means laddies, hereby banned, as the same causes huge air, noise and solid waste problems. So the Supreme Court saying laddies are banned. The sale shall only be through licensed traders, and it shall be ensured that these licensed traders are selling those firecrackers which are permitted by this order. No e-commerce websites, including Flipkart, Amazon, etc., shall accept any online orders and effect any online sales. Any such e-commerce companies found selling crackers online will be hauled up for contempt of court. So these are some of the other observations made by the Supreme Court in its order. So those of you who are going out there to try and get your hands on laddies banned by the Supreme Court with this order. Ashmit, any other important takeaways there?
Well, I would again like to come back on the point of the enforceability as far as Delhi NCR is concerned. Now, as far as Direction 8 that is being referred to, it is a positive direction. It speaks of the current inventory that exists, that it cannot be sold in Delhi NCR. Now, that does not automatically translate into that outside Delhi NCR it can be sold. It's a positive direction, not a negative one. Having said that, the first 42(1) is very clear. that as far as the ones that do not meet the criteria of green firecrackers, their production, their manufacture and sale will be disallowed. Their sale is to be prohibited across the country. I don't think there's any confusion about that. It's a risky proposition to be going ahead and taking that proposition this early.
Okay, so as Mr. Tikani said, maybe the Firecrackers Association will need to get more legal interpretation of the Supreme Court order. But Saurabh, I want to come back again to the point on peso, which is something that we've discussed and raised, the kind of responsibility that now falls under peso to be able to comply with the directions of the Supreme Court. What worries you? What concerns you about that?
Well, look, I mean, the concern is really a lack of infrastructure and a lack of personnel to be able to carry out the rather heavy responsibilities that's been put on their shoulders. And I think they have to, if it means that they need to beef up the organization, that needs to happen. But the fundamental point that needs to be understood is that till such time as peso is not approving firecrackers which are meeting those stringent norms that the Supreme Court has set, those firecrackers are not allowed to be sold, and to the extent that they are sold, we then have to rely on our police to ensure that they come in and stop it. So I think, of course, in this country we've always had an issue with enforcing judgments. That is you know, potentially 9/10 of the battle. I mean, we won the first 10th of it, which is to get the order in place, but the enforcement is where the actual result will be seen. So, which is why I keep saying that it has to be a concerted effort. So if peso needs to act with the police to ensure that they can carry out their statutory duty and to us, that is what needs to happen. And I think this has to be an effort between the authorities, but for the authorities to succeed, they must not only build awareness amongst the citizenry, but they must also bring citizenry into this fold to help with the effort, because at the end of the day, this is done for no other reason than to improve the air that we all breathe.
Absolutely. And let me go back again to Mr. Tikani. Mr. Tikani, you know, again, the Supreme Court making it very clear in its order that things like barium salts in fireworks will now be banned. It says barium salts in fireworks hereby banned. It says peso is directed to review the clinical composition of fireworks, particularly reducing the aluminum content. And this report, it's asked for its submission in about 2 weeks. It's also said that peso shall test and check for the presence of already banned chemicals like lithium, arsenic, antimony, lead and mercury. Mr. Tikani, what is this going to mean now for your industry in terms of what is being produced and what is being manufactured? I come back again to my question, sir, for which you have not given me a straightforward answer so far.
Ma'am, I am not the right person to answer on behalf of the manufacturer. I am a person of the Traders Association. How would I answer regarding the manufacturing chemicals and other stuff which I am not aware of?
But you should know what you're selling, sir. You should know what you're selling. You should know what you're selling. I mean, you're selling. You will be held for contempt.
Ma'am, we are selling the things approved by peso. Our products are approved by peso, and there is a stamp that it is approved by peso. When we sell approved things, how would we be caught? I am just on that point. If we are selling some approved product which was legal today,
they cannot sell that anymore.
Sorry, sir? Sorry?
You cannot sell that today unless
sir,
you have got
my interpretation talks about it cannot be sold in Delhi NCR and not anywhere else. My interpretation says that, and I associate interpretation is very clear on that.
We'll try and get...
Leave the interpretation
we'll try and get the interpretation issue sorted out, hopefully.
Yeah, but look, even if you take it in Delhi NCR, you must know what you're selling, because at the end of the day, you need to know that the firecracker that you sell is in compliance with the most stringent norms that the Supreme Court has today put in place. And so just saying that something has been approved by peso before is now not sufficient for you to be able to sell that. And if you sell it, you are in violation of the Supreme Court order. So it is not to say that you have... Look, it is absolutely crystal clear. I don't want to get into a debate with you whether it applies nationwide or not. Many people on this...
We'll try and get to the, we'll try and give you some conclusive sort of takeaway on that front, hopefully by the end of this program. But Mr. Singh, let me come back to you, sir, on one of the other important issues that the court has basically spoken of, and that it has not just said for Delhi NCR, but it said that for all major cities across the country. And this business of creating community spaces for community celebrations, so to speak, for burning firecrackers as part of a community celebration. So, designated areas for being able to carry forward this activity. This clearly seems to be a step in the right direction. Of course, once again, enforceability is an issue.
Obviously, enforceability may be difficult, but it is certainly no longer an option, but a compulsion on you and me and the entire nation. For too long have we suffered the noisy decibels, and it was impossible for any one of us to go out on any festival after 5 in the evening. Now that this has happened, enforceability is a question. I do know of apps that can detect the decibel noise, yes, and record it. But I also think it is perfectly doable for police forensic science laboratories to devise litmus papers to test and identify arsenic, mercury, and other damaging elements like phosphorus, etc. It is not impossible. We still have the time pre-Diwali to go in and design these litmus and checking papers, apps on every policeman's mobile to identify the decibels and also the elements that may be in the fumes or in the effluents. But yes, enforceability is a problem, educating the police. The police leadership has to know what to do, when to do, and how to do. The designated areas and the timings, they have to be enforced. Let there be no confusion that when you are flooded with complaints, don't get bogged down by the complaints, but give at least a proper and a professional response through your two-wheelers, through foot patrolmen, through your patrol cars, and let the leadership come out and give at least a semblance, give a brave reply in these circumstances, because the Supreme Court has indeed run the extra mile and has given what was in absolute public interest.
Yes.
Another point, what are we doing about the Chinese imports and crackers of Chinese pedigree? I do hope that the police and everybody is aware that they are the most obnoxious of the breed of the cracker varieties.
Well, that's something to ponder over and to act against as well. But for this evening, gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us to discuss the implications of the order that's been passed by the Apex Court on regulating the sale of firecrackers in India. Vinod Tikani, Saurabh Bhasin, Vikram Singh, thanks very much for joining us here this evening. We'll take a break, but don't go anywhere. The news continues on CNBC TV 18.